Donc, bonjour à toutes et à tous. Nous vous souhaitions la bienvenue à l'événement cet après-midi avec Swapnaa Tamhane, Rajyashri Goody, Sajan et Birender Yadav, présenté dans le cadre de l'exposition Constitution à l'affiche à la Galerie Léonard des Binellen jusqu'au 22 janvier. Mon nom est Robin Simpson et je suis le coordinateur des programmes publics éducatifs à la Galerie, ici à l'Université Concordia à Montréal. Nous aimerions commencer par reconnaître que l'Université Concordia est située en territoire autochtone non cédé et que la nation Ganéon-Gahaga est gardienne des terres et des eaux sur lesquelles nous nous réunissons. C'est dans le respect des liens avec le passé, le présent et l'avenir que nous continuons d'entretenir des relations avec les divers peuples autochtones et autres peuples qui résident à Tiohtià:ke, Montréal. Une note sur le protocole de l'événement aujourd'hui. Nous vous demandons de garder votre micro fermé pendant la conversation. La conversation sera suivie par une période de questions dans laquelle vous êtes toutes et tous invités à participer. Note que l'événement déroulera en anglais. Toutefois, soyez à l'aise de poser vos questions dans la langue de votre choix, soit à vive voix ou de les taper dans le chat, et nous pouvons les traduire. Donc, je vous offre une courte introduction à Swapna, Rajyashri, Sajan et Birender. Ceci est adapté de leur biographie que vous pouvez trouver sur notre site web. L'artiste et commercial Swapnaa Tamhane détient une maîtrise en art contemporain de l'Université de Manchester 2001 et une maîtrise en art visuel, en film et pratique matérielle de l'Université Concordia 2021. Sa pratique en art visuel se concentre sur le dessin ainsi que sur la décolonisation de l'art, de l'artisanat et du design. Elle prépare des expositions individuelles au Royal Ontario Museum de Toronto et au Victoria et Albert Museum de Dundee. Sajan est une artiste intersectionnelle originaire d'une famille de récolteurs de caoutchouc dans un village isolé du secteur nord de l'État de Kerala, dans l'Inde du Sud. Son travail donne voix aux préoccupations des peuples marginalisés et opprimés de l'Inde, vécu à travers le Black Dalit Body, le corps Dalit noir de l'artiste. La pratique de la performance de Mani met l'accent sur la présence incarnée et confronte la douleur, la honte, la peur et le pouvoir. De 2019 à 2021, il était bénéficiaire d'une bourse de Berlin Senate, de Braunschweig Projects et était récipiendaire de l'Académie Schloss Solitude Fellowship en Allemagne. À travers ces divers médias, incluant l'écriture, la céramique, la photographie, la vidéo et des œuvres sculpturales faites d'objets trouvés et de produits alimentaires, Rajyashri Goody tente de décoder et de rendre visibles les instances de pouvoir quotidien et de la résistance ancienne des communautés Dalit en Inde, dont elle-même est issue. Au début de 2018, elle a complété la recherche liée à la bourse d'artistes invités à l'Université Harvard de Cambridge, où elle s'est concentrée à l'exploration de la complexité et de la similarité et de la signification des murs alimentaires dans les recettes de race et de caste. Elle effectue actuellement une résidence à la Rijksacademie d'Amsterdam. Birender Yadav est natif de Dhanbad, une ville construite à proximité d'un gisement de minerais de fer et de charbon, l'anciennement une région forestière habitée par une population indigène qui compose le Gondwana. Alors, jeune garçon, Yadav avait été dirigé vers des études d'art en Benares de façon à ce qu'ils puissent facilement faire le design d'équipements que son père coulait à la fonderie de la mine. Le travail de Yadav utilisait la complexité du langage, de travail et de la migration comme construction conceptuelle des recettes intimes qui ont été les siennes. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this afternoon's event with Swapna Tamhane, Rajyashri Goody, Sajan and Birender Yadav, presented as part of the exhibition Constitutions on View at the gallery until January 22nd. My name is Robin Simpson, and I'm the coordinator of public programs and education here at the Leonard and Bina Allen Art Gallery. We would like to acknowledge that Concordia University is located on unceded Indigenous lands, and the Kanien'kehá:ka Nation are recognized as the custodians of the lands and waters on which we gather. We respect the continued connections with the past, present, and future in our ongoing relationships with Indigenous and other peoples within the Tiohtià:ke Montreal community. A note on protocol today. We ask you to please keep your microphones closed during the conversation. This conversation will be followed by a discussion during which you are all invited to participate in. So a short introduction to Swapna, Rajyashri, Sajan, and Birender. These adapted from their bios is found on our website, and before I pass it on to them. An artist and curator, Swapna Tamhane has an MA in Contemporary Art, University of Manchester, 2001, and an MFA in Fibers and Material Practices, Concordia University, 2021. Her visual practice is dedicated to drawing and decolonizing art, craft, and design. She has upcoming solo exhibitions at the Royal Ontario Museum, Toronto, and the Victoria and Albert Museum, Dundee. Sajan Mani is an intersectional artist hailing from a family of rubber tappers in a remote village in the northern part of Kerala, South India. His work voices the issues of marginalized and oppressed peoples of India via the Black Dalit body of the artist. Mani's performance practice insists on embodied presence, confronting pain, shame, fear, and power. From 2019 to 2021, he received an artistic research grant from the Berlin Senate, Fine Arts Scholarship from the Braunschweig Projects, and the Academy Solitude Fellowship, Germany. Through the use of various mediums, including writing, ceramics, photography, video, and sculptural works made with found objects and food items, Rajyashri Goody attempts to decode and make visible instances of everyday power and resistance within Dalit communities in India. She comes from the Dalit community herself. In early 2018, she completed a visiting artist fellowship at Harvard University, Cambridge, where she was exploring complexities, parallels, and the significance of food ways in race and caste narratives. She is currently a resident at Rijksacademie, Amsterdam. Birender Yadav comes from Dhanbad, a city built on its proximity on the proximity of an iron ore and coal mine, and once forested and inhabited by indigenous people who compose the Gondwana. Yadav was sent to Banaras as a young boy to study art so that he could easily design equipment his father casted at the foundry in the mine. Yadav's work taps into the complexity of language, labor, and migration as conceptual constructs of personal stories that he has inhabited. So I'm going to pass the word on to Swapna Tamhane. Everyone enjoy the event, and we're looking forward to your comments and questions at the end of the conversation. Thank you.
Hi, welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. This is such a pleasure to talk to you each. Firstly, thank you, Robin and Michelle and the Leonard and Bina Allen Art Gallery for inviting me to curate this exhibition, which is titled Constitutions. And I feel like I've been doing a lot of talking on behalf of the artists because none of them are here. First of all, it's amazing to have an exhibition during COVID. So it's great that people have been able to see your work. So I'm really excited to see or have a discussion with Birender, Rajyashri, and Sajan today. And just to remind us that there are 5 artists in this exhibition. There's Prajakta Patnis, Saurabh Hura, Birender, Rajyashri, and Sajan. And in November, we had a conversation with Saurabh and Prajakta, which you can find on the gallery website. So today is kind of a sort of second part of that. And even in preparing for today's conversation, I was thinking some of these questions are the questions I have for you, everything is sort of interlinked. So just in the framing of constitutions, which is really, the title was really inspired partly, from Sajan, who is writing the Constitution Malayalam, and thinking about Rajyashri's work in terms of the Manusmriti as a sort of, the sort of Hindu constitution, and also Saurabh, whose work includes the preamble to the Constitution, and very much thinking about this relationship between state and body, and currently witnessing this sort of Hindu fascist takeover that's happening at the moment. In which, of course, they're having election rallies right now, and nobody is wearing a mask, and they're gathering people together. So it's a strange time. So just hearing that introduction in French and English, I think my first question to you 3 is really thinking about language and where language comes into your work, and in particular, how you relate to language and literacy coming from Dalit communities. Sajan, you're very much focused on Malayalam, which is, Hindi is not it's sort of the, main language in India, but there's so many languages and so many dialects. And Birender, in terms of your sort of overhearing a dialect that's spoken from your home city, and Rajyashri, in our conversations, you were talking about how English is an aspirational language for Dalits. So can we talk about a little bit, maybe I'll start with you, Sajan, and Malayalam. And by the way, I just want to say that we're all in different locations. So Birender is in Delhi, Rajyashri is in Amsterdam, and Sajan is currently in Kerala. So we're all in different climates and geographies. So I'll start with you, Sajan.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Swapna. I hope I'm audible.
Yes. Good.
Yeah, thank you, everyone. Thank you, Swapna. Thank you, Concordia University, for this opportunity. And I think it's very important in this historical juncture where we should critically inquire about the idea of the India itself. So to giving the space, I'm really thankful for the university and all the people behind. To answer your question, maybe I will tell a little bit about my mother tongue Malayalam, whereas I'm investigating its complex historical and political relationship, not only to the mainland India, but also to where I'm a local now, which is Germany, because Protestant missionary were working in the language, and that history is entangled with the history of Dalits, which is really erased or suppressed from the so-called history of South India or India. So maybe I will show some pictures to start. I'm going to share a screen. Screen share. Okay, one second. So one second, I'm just playing this video.
देश में हिंदुत्व चलेगा, कोई ईसाइयत नहीं चलेगी।
So I'm coming from a place where the slogan is Santa Claus Murdabad. I don't think much explanation is needed at this moment. So they were burning Santa Claus all over India the day of Christmas Hindu right wing. So I don't think I need to explain more about that. Yeah, so to answer your question about my arrival, one second, it's loading. Sorry about my internet connection. I'm in a remote place. So I mean, I was really thinking about the language and how to form a resistant practice with my mother tongue. And I mean, obviously, a language is not just a language, it's a culture, it's an organism, it's a still developing and living organism. As I told you before, the Malayalam and its complicated relationship to Germany, maybe I will read a little bit from Faith and Industrial Reformation by Jayaprakash Raghavaiah. It's about the Basel Mission, Malabar and South India reformations. Because why I'm reading is the Basel Mission, which was a German Swiss missionary, has a very big role in the emancipation and also the history making of Dalits in Kerala. The Basel Mission was unique in the sense that it ventured into commercial and economic activities in a planned and deliberate manner, and in the process ended up in establishing large post-industrial revolution type of modern industries in the lines of modern handloom weaving and tile manufacture in the district of Malabar and South Canara. That is page number 27, I just read it. And converts to Basel Mission came mainly from lower classes. In Kerala, there was polluting distances between lower castes, but these castes were a heterogeneous group. The two major social groups that form the bulk of converts are Tiya and Cheruma communities. In the traditional society, a Cheruman had to keep a distance of 16 feet from the Tiyan, who was considered above in the caste hierarchy. Similarly, a member of the Tiya caste had to maintain a distance of 16 feet from a Nayar. During the 19th century, within the Protestant churches, there was a discussion on the compatibility of caste and Christianity. I will read one more sentence just to give the idea. Cheruma or Pulaya caste in Malabar and their equivalent of Holaya caste in South Canara formed a significant portion of converts. They were slaves attached to the agricultural lands of landlords. In Malabar district, when the land was sold, the slaves attached to the land was also deemed to have been sold to the new owner. The slaves deemed to have been sold to the new owner. The slaves were not allowed to acquire education. being a polluting caste, they had to keep certain distances from the upper caste. The social mobility that converts from these castes had acquired was very visible. I mean, Basel Mission started in 1834, but also in 1879, a Dalit prophet, Poigil Appachan, he started singing this songs about the plights of the Dalit grandparents were killed in the fields. So in my practice, I'm using his songs as a not only as an inspiration, but also a medium to create an alternative history to resist this hegemonic history, which is Brahmanical knowledge production. So some of my, I'm just showing some pictures about that past, because the Basel Mission was also involving in Malayalam in various ways. As you can see, in my work, like this, Poigil Appachan was singing about, there was no single letter in the history about my race. So these, this is in Malaya, and I just translated it to English, but the original text is in Malayalam, and I use that Malayalam text to use as a writing as a drawing as a writing kind of a practice of mine. So maybe I will stop here now, and then maybe we can talk later about.
And I just want to say, so the work that is in Constitutions is, it's the Constitution written in Malayalam.
Yeah, yes.
And then there's a series of serigraphs that are printed on rubber. So your family is rubber tappers, come from a family of rubber tappers, and you've printed these serigraphs. And then the words of Poigil Appachan are written in Malayalam on those works in rubber. We'll come back to Appachan in a moment. Just to give a context, he developed the Church of Obvious Salvation in the 1800s in South India. So just to continue with this relationship between language and literacy, the work, Rajyashri, that you have, The Milk of the Tigress, which was made for this exhibition, I very much feel that it's a portrait of Dalit literature. And so for those of you who are joining us, the work is, well, Raj, I'll let you describe them. I just want to say that the works include a collection of books that are from the Webster Library, but maybe just I'll let you describe the work before I go into it.
No problem. Hi. Well, The Milk of the Tigress is basically a sort of library intervention that I did at the gallery, specifically because it was located in a library. And I found that quite interesting because as Sajan mentioned earlier, we didn't have access to schooling, to literacy. We weren't allowed to express ourselves through written language. This was not just sort of what we were told we couldn't do. It was written down in the Manusmriti, which was a law book that was written thousands of years ago. So these are like written down rules that what Dalit people can and can't do, what people of all castes can and can't do. And in 1927, one of our most important social leaders, Dr. Ambedkar, he burnt the Manusmriti as a sign of saying that we reject everything in it and we reject this Hindu practice of caste. And I've always found that burning of the Manusmriti very powerful. And I've been thinking about it related to language and literacy, because in the end, the Manusmriti is just a book. It's just paper and print and ink. And yet it's so powerful that it can hold like millions of people in this position for thousands of years. So thinking about the material aspect of it just being paper, and then the sort of power of paper and the power of the written word, I've been making pulp out of the Manusmriti a lot. So I also make plain paper, and then I've also been making sort of sculptural objects. And with this show, I thought, okay, how like it would be interesting to coat bookshelves with the Manusmriti, and then bring out whatever collection the library has on caste. This was also personally interesting to me because I'm just interested in, you know, what like a library in Canada has caste, like and you know, what books does it have? Does it have a lot of Dalit literature? Does it have a lot of, and surprisingly it had a lot, like much more than that I was expecting. So I found that quite interesting also, because I think many people who are sort of upper caste, or you know, not from oppressed communities, often complain about, you know, oh, but there isn't enough material, or there isn't enough out there isn't enough, like we haven't done our research because there just isn't enough. And in a way, the library intervention of pulling out all these books and keeping them there is also a way of saying that, oh, well, actually you just have to try a little harder, you just have to look, and because people have been doing the work for hundreds of years. So yeah, so I just felt like books written on caste and by Dalit writers, placed on shelves made of the Manusmriti, would be a sort of push and pull of struggle as well, and of power, because as much as we are working on eliminating and eradicating caste, it hasn't gone away. And as you were saying, Swapna, like extremist forces are still very much powerful in India. So it is a constant struggle. And I wanted to acknowledge that by placing the books on the Manusmriti.
Yeah, and I mean the access to education. So just the even having that presence of text written by Dalits, you know, in this artwork, is, first of all, having the Manusmriti pulped is a very political act. And then secondly, by even having text. So there's this kind of these amazing like moments that are meeting each other. And then of course, it's interesting for me to hear that you say it's surprising to see how many books were actually on caste, you know, violence, caste history, and books by Dalit writers. And I know that you've done a similar, or have done sort of similar research in the past. Is there a sort of comparison that you can think of in terms of like, you know, smaller collections to larger collections, and what you're kind of looking at in these different libraries? And is this do you feel that this work is something that you would kind of continue and expand on?
I think so. I think especially, I mean, I was thinking about it this morning, it would be very interesting to do it in India, particularly because libraries in academic institutions in India still have so much bureaucracy and red tape around them, and research centers in general, and archive centers. So even though there is a lot of information and there is a lot of things we could access, it's just so difficult to. Like I remember studying sociology in Pune and not being allowed to go to another aisle where I was only allowed to access sociology books, and no sort of literature books, no history books, unless sort of I knew someone in the library.
Wow.
So it's also this just red taping of just basic knowledge and information that makes it so difficult for people in India to even sort of educate themselves when they want. And I think I'll definitely continue it, whether it's sort of outside of India or hopefully within India. Because I hope people do sort of, like for me, it's a very sort of personal thing that I learn more and more about my history through reading, because it's been a struggle to even get to this point where so many in our community have been able to have access to education. That's literally a life or death struggle, and that many of us have turned to writing. I think it's beautiful and especially powerful because we finally have the time to, not the time, but the ability to voice our struggles through pen and paper. And I feel like it's my duty as a Dalit person to study this, to research whatever people have already done and educate myself that way, rather than just relying on, you know, my imagination or just what other mainstream books talk about caste.
And I just want to go back to in one of our conversations, you said that English is an aspirational language. And, you know, it's sort of a crux because on one hand, it's the colonizer's language. And on the other hand, Sanskrit is also an oppressive language for Dalits. Can you just expand on what you mean by aspirational?
I mean, English is access. Like knowing English means having access to things. And I guess with me, especially, like my father's English and my mother's Indian, Dalit, and she's always sort of joked about it, but also in a serious way, that, you know, it was only through marrying my father that my brother and I could have access to good English schooling. And she says that that's one of the reasons why she married my father, because it's important to sort of get opportunities in life that many other people from our community just can't get access to. And just knowing English in India is also a possibility that you can move forward from caste. I don't think it's real, but you know, Sanskrit is as foreign a language, way more foreign a language to me than English, not just because of my father, but also in terms of colonization. Like the caste system is internal colonization. It's one community eating another community. So you would see sort of languages like Sanskrit or major, like, you know, very sort of colonizing languages.
It just glitched for a second with the sound. Well, I mean, in speaking of colonization, I feel like, Birender, when I was reading your bio, for you having moved from Dhanbad and then coming to Benares, and from you know, what I've learned from your bio is that you sort of overheard these trafficked workers, so those who don't have any identity, and you recognize them through their dialect. And I found that really fascinating. Can you talk a little bit about that history? You know, we only have 3 drawings of yours in this exhibition, but you have done a much larger sort of ongoing body of work in which you're focused on those who work in brick kilns in extremely hot temperatures. Can you talk a little about that, the background of that work?
Yeah, for me, language is very different in my context. I encountered this laborer with only because of language, because they are from my hometown. They also speak Khota, the tribal language. And because of the language we met, and they introduced me to the brick kiln and brick kiln owner. And during my ground research in the brick kiln, what I found, and because of the language, they were exploited, because their language and the language of the bricklane owner is totally different, and they are illiterate, and that's for them, it's easy to exploit. And because and even they don't know about their legal provision, and they have no identity card, voter card, and the lots of issue happen. What I found, because I started working in bricklane in 2015, and that time, the same time, Indian government introduced Aadhaar card. What I found, when they go for making Aadhaar card and their fingerprint erase.
Can you just say what the Aadhaar card is?
It's a unique identity, unique ID
Okay.
for every citizen, yeah. And when the worker, they go for their card and their fingerprint erase because of they carry hot bricks. What I found, it's like in the government, they claim it's like unique identity. But in the ground, it's like unique identity means like where they try to their fingerprint, it's not happen because of their fingerprint was out. Yeah, and this way, like how this happened in the bricklane. Yeah.
It's an amazing process of erasure and non-erasure, like a record and erasure at the same time that's happening. But what I found interesting was that these laborers who were working in brick kilns, can you just explain how they would have ended up in working there, like where they would have originally come from and how they ended up working there?
Because the all workers are from the tribal, like in the bricklane where I document is like it's close to Varanasi, the place where I did master, and all the like 90% workers are from the tribal. It's they hire entire family and they live there on the construction site, and they pay to the head of the family. It's the system there, and the children, women, everybody work there, and that's the main reason also, like even the children, they don't go to school, and they help their parents, and that's why what I found, like 3 generations they still working in that site.
But they're so from what I understand, they would have been they would have become landless or moved originally through colonization, through British
Mostly
colonial.
are landless. Because mostly are landless. Yeah.
And through sort of forest being felled and cleared, they were forced to move. So I mean, I really love this idea that you sort of overheard them through a very particular dialect. In the exhibition there, of the 3 drawings, there's one that includes this kind of what I think of as like a self-enclosed tower of bricks. This, I really look at it as like sort of a body and an architecture at the same time. Can you just maybe tell us a little bit about this drawing series created over the last year?
Yeah. This drawing I did during the last year. I also hold up in my studio, and like many other, I also wanted to react on the pandemic situation, but I was unhappy to reduce the sensationalized media images to other artistic medium, and in this way, the historically marginalized classes more affected in any natural calamity struck, and that's why I decided to decided to go to my memory and what I have in last 5 to 6 years with the bricklane workers, and I'm going back to my work, and I'm started redoing and extracting particularly the tools of the laborer. I started to visualize the tools of a laborer in individual and independent identity. Each tools become a human personality and narrating their own stories. And Yeah, I'm in this way. This all the series done in this way. Yeah.
Yeah, there's definitely a sense of the. I mean, for me, the first thing that sort of came up was all these bodies walking. So, you know, to remind us that last year Modi announced a lockdown within 4 hours. And there was a massive exodus of migrant workers who were leaving these larger cities to return to their villages. So it sort of instantly reminded me of these bodies are just literally tools.
Yeah.
And there's no, you know, regard for their humanity, or just such a disaster to sort of see that. But I mean, it's really interesting that you did a sort of, you know, as Sajan is saying, like a real resistance. And even like Rajyashri, you know, the material is also resisting, but in your way, you're kind of resisting these like sensual media images that were coming out that of course everyone is consuming, you know, in the West and in the East, that particularly, you know, in April of this year with the number of funerals and just those kind of aerial images. I find that really interesting because you're in those drawings in particular. Robin, I don't know if you can just, if you can put them up on the screen.
Yeah, 1 second.
As we're talking, they're all sort of in these, they're really self-enclosed in a very tight room. And yeah, I find that really fascinating that there's no kind of escape. You're really confronted with this, so here are the drawings that are included. And then in that same room, there's Sajan's Constitution in Malayalam, as well as a video piece as well, in that kind of configuration of works. Yeah, I just, in kind of continuing to think about undocumented laborers and this relationship between caste and capitalism. Sajan, you know, you have a work called Caspital, which is, you know, primarily it's a performance in which you really confront the viewer with your Dalit, you know, quote unquote, black body. And Birender, you're sort of documenting these landless laborers. Sajan, can you talk a little bit about that, about your sort of past performances and this, yeah, I guess the relationship between, well, caste, capitalism, communism, how these things are all kind of connected, and also, you know, well, working together and also benefiting from each other.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. I mean, as a Dalit black body coming from a place with a prolonged history of left-wing politics, growing up with the books published in Malayalam from Moscow in the USSR time, but also being exposed to a long history of slavery and bonded labor, failures is more important than festival for me. When I get a invitation to perform, to celebrate the revolution, specks of communism in Hausekunst, Munich, this was I was thinking. And then I was, taking the same songs of Poigel Apachan. He born as a Dalit, he born as a slave. And I took it as a point of departure. And as I told before, the songs as an archive form, I performed for a duration of 9 hours. I can show the some photographs of the performances. I was thinking, most of my works have a history of research, a long research. At the moment, I'm looking into the complicated history of my own mother tongue and Germany, as I mentioned before. Everyone failed in front of caste, including Communist Party in India.
Mm-hmm.
As we discuss, we can also see that as Ambedkar pointed it out very earlier, that caste is also not just Indian or subcontinent's problem. It's also across the border, and it's an international problem. But coming back to the failure, so for me, the performance was an act of resistance through my own body to draw an attention to historical and current injustice. And for me, my body is a site of powerless, the untouchable and unspeakable. And that performance for 9 hours was an attempt to evoke pain, shame, power, and fear. For me, when I perform, I'm not an individual, but I'm kind of carrying these collective memories. And also a lot of my works, I'm very much excited about the relationship with the human and animal, especially in the context of Dalit histories where Dalit grandparents were killed in the fields as cows. So I'm very much, a lot of my works, I wanted to collaborate with animals, especially cow. I can just quickly show a couple of images. This is Caspital. So for the duration of 9 hours, I was filling the walls of this museum. And this museum is also very interesting. Architecturally, it's very interesting.
This is the Haus der Kunst, right, in Munich?
Yeah. Sorry, I didn't.
So this was built as Hitler wanted it as his grand art museum.
Yeah. Sorry, I didn't share my screen. Sorry, 1 second. I forget to share the screen. Sorry, 1 second. Yeah, this is the image. So so that museum, the architecture is also a Nazi architecture, and some of the songs is like Aryappu Nattil Ninne Teyyandara. It means Aryappu Pattanmare Teyyandara. This is a song, so which means the Brahmins who comes from the Aryan lands conquered us. This is one of the song, and it's also very interesting for me to do my drawing as writing as writing as drawing practice on the walls of this Aryan supremacy building in a way. So yeah, and many of my performances also use my mother tongue, also Poyela Pachan songs. These are from some of other shows. Yeah. And also at the moment, I'm also expanding drawing as writing in another, like I'm experimenting with the language in other sense. Also other sensorial, this is like 3 rubber pieces, which also shows in this. You can also experience this in the show, where you can also see Malayalam in another treatment.
Can you just, do you have a detail of the serigraph
Yeah.
of this work?
did
Yeah. And can you
they-
just show that so that so these are printed on natural rubber?
Yeah, these are.
And yeah.
yeah.
No, you go ahead.
Sorry. So one of the main reason I use a rubber is because I'm very much connected to my personal biographies. I'm working a lot with my personal biographies, and my parents were rubber tappers. They were working for other people's plantations. And so for my memory, it's really connected, this material, the elasticity, the touch, smell, and everything. So I used rubber in a lot of my works. And also rubber was one of the main element in the Industrial Revolution before, we can also see that even the starting point of the share markets and all the derivatives history and so on, the economic history. And these photographs, I think my responsibility in Europe is to indulge and to look into the Dalit histories, which is in the archives in especially Germany and Switzerland, connected to the South Indian Dalit histories, photographs, manuscripts, and also a lot of personal correspondence and so on. So these are the photographs I find out from Berlin, in one of the museums. And this is Dalit grandmother's Tanda Pulaya, actually. So I treated this photograph and then worked on it. And like this photograph, many of the photographs we haven't seen back in India. It's also, it's also happened in the context of in the larger scale of colonization, but it's also entangled with the histories of Dalit histories. So it's a very interesting, difficult, but for us, it's a big source of our own histories.
Can you talk about who they are, the Tanda Pulian, the image of the women?
Yeah, the Pulaya is one of the very lower caste, like mostly slaves who are attached to the farm owner, who is upper caste. So they didn't have enough clothes, or they are not allowed to cover their breast, and and also to keep a distance, and they don't have proper housing. So.
And they were believed, from what I understand, they were supposed to be emancipated or have received, like, moved out of a sort of slave caste, but never actually were. Is that correct?
Complicated. There was social. Obviously, lower caste acquired social mobility, a certain level of social mobility when they convert to Christianity. I'm talking about the later period of Protestant Christianity and so on. But even then, when the Christian missionary is working in the context of conversion, initially, mostly upper caste people were converted. And so even there was churches created for Dalits. So even in Christianity couldn't escape from the caste system in India. So this is very interesting story. That's why Basel Mission is very interesting location for me, because they were working not in a very large scale conversion, but in especially the slave caste, and they were working along with the lower caste converted people, and also the economic activities they started. They started the tile factory in Mangalore. they started printing books in Mangalore. And also that's why Herman Gundert came and worked for the Malayalam for the 30 years. And also they started handloom. And all of these economic activities actually to connect, to support the newly converted Dalits who were, were away from all the works and jobs that they were allocated in the caste hierarchy before. So it to support these economic activities were to support the new converts.
And the words, yeah, so you've written, so on the serigraphs you've written, oh, these are amazing. The words of Pokayal Apachan, who, so along with Jyoti Rao and Savitribai Phule were kind of very early activists to get rid of caste discrimination. And so in sort of working with all of you and learning so much, I learned that, Pokayal Apachan, his writings have sort of been suppressed for up until 2006. And something like, Ambedkar's Annihilation of Caste is also, it's not on any university syllabus, but it's like there are so many publications, but it hasn't, it's not a text that's, mandatory reading, in which she's calling for, this was a lecture that was delivered to the sort of more liberal Hindus to, call for the devaluation of Hinduism and its kind of ongoing suppression of I'm thinking now in terms of this kind of material relationship, like for Sajan, you're working with rubber. Rajyashri, of course, there's the pulped Manusmriti bookshelf. And the second work of the three works that are in constitutions, What is the Caste of Water, again, is like very materially rich in terms of the signification. And both of those pieces, like The Milk of the Tigress and What is the Caste of Water, they both refer to moments in 1927. With What is the Caste of Water, it'd be great if you can talk about how that work came about and how you sort of, it's an incredibly strong piece, but it sort of seduces you in terms of its, can you pull up an image of that actually, as we're talking? It sort of seduces you, and it's like, and it's kind of language of kind of contemporary art, and it's sort of minimalist presentation. And it's sort of, initial kind of beauty. And then as you're sort of looking at it and learning about it, it's a very, this work here in the front, What is the Caste of Water? So these two works, The Milk of the Tigress and What is the Caste of Water, they're referring very strongly to a particular protest that Dr. Ambedkar led in 1927. Rajyashri, I'll hand it over to you to.
Sure. So it's a collection of 108 glasses, just filled with water, and then they're mixed with panchagavya, which is a mix of cow dung, cow urine, ghee, butter, ghee is butter, curd, and milk. And it's this sort of mix which is also considered fertilizer. But in the Manusmriti, which we were talking about earlier, it's also this sort of mix that is fed to somebody who does something wrong. So say you're a thief and you've been caught, the Manusmriti sort of prescribes that you should feed the thief panchagavya to sort of purify their insides. So it's like sort of a punishment as well, but it's a bit horrific. And in 1927, Dr. Ambedkar and they say maybe around 10,000 people came to this small town of Mahad which is a few hours away from where I live. And they drank the water from this big water tank in the middle of the village. And this water tank was open to everybody except Dalit people. And Dr. Ambedkar and his followers came there and drank the water, sort of not as just to say, oh yes, we're drinking the water to quench our thirst, but also that we are equal to anybody else who drinks this water, and our touch is not impure. And this led to a lot of rioting, but also the upper caste people of that area decided to then purify the water tank by pouring 108 pots of panchagavya, of this mix of cow dung, cow urine, milk, ghee, curd, into the water tank to purify it from our impure touch. And I found that really powerful and also very sad, almost in a way more violent than actual physical violence. Just the fact that somebody can think that your touch is so impure that they're willing to basically poison themselves to purify themselves. And I made it in sort of glasses now and poured panchagavya in it to reflect on it today in these times when especially in 2017, 2018, there was a lot of lynching of people happening because of illegal sort of transportation of beef, etc. And most of these people who were being lynched were Dalits and Muslims. And the people who were attacking them were upper caste Hindus who were protecting their cows. And as a punishment to these people on YouTube also, I think even now you can find like horrific videos of these like cow protectors force feeding people cow urine as a punishment, you know, oh, you have to purify yourself, so here, like, eat this. So these are very sort of horrific gestures, all in the name of purity, that are still continuing. So this was sort of my interpretation of it, I guess.
And how did you kind of think to put them in these sort of glasses? Like, what was the intention behind that?
Well, yeah, just something that sort of seems a bit like modern and sort of seems so casual, sort of a glass anywhere and drinking from it. Whereas the whole idea of earthen pots, I feel like, was a bit too like nostalgic, and like in a particular time, or like, oh, this happened in 1927, it doesn't happen anymore. And I hate those conversations, because those conversations are always what we have to deal with. Like, this used to happen, like caste doesn't, not the same anymore. And I feel like the glasses sort of being what many people use now, especially richer people in India. I mean, I think many of us still use stainless aluminum glasses, but sort of it is a bit of an elite sign to use like a glass. And I just wanted to signal at that, like, it could be leftovers from a party, or it could be something that people are just casually drinking. Yeah, I'm not sure what the response was. Hopefully there was not much.
No. What's that?
Hopefully there wasn't much smell left from the panchagavya.
Well, it was quite strong. I mean, it was quite funny to, for those of you joining us, like, we had to install the works without the artists being here. And so opening those jars of panchagavya was quite interesting in a closed gallery in the West where there are no windows that are open, and that smell, it just was really, really took me right back to India. It's quite It was very pungent and very like earthy, and your decision to place them on plinths and on the ground, what was that, or how did you kind of think about that?
Well, the three plinths sort of relate to the steps of the water tank.
Okay.
Go down, and just that image of like many people walking down the steps to this water. That's why I wanted to keep it sort of low, and the plinth sort of looking like steps, because I do like sort of in my work I realize like number is quite important, like many things at once, but also that like, each thing represents perhaps a person. I guess like Birender said earlier, like each object represents one person. So like 108 people walking down these steps down to the water.
And you've used the floor in the past for sculptural works.
Yeah.
In which you've presented these ceramic pieces that are are they're casts of food, or are they casts of elements of food, or can you talk about what are they when you do you have any images of them, by the way, that you can just share? And I'm just thinking now about your both Sajan and yourself and your relationship to the politics of food amongst Dalit communities. And Sajan, you have a performance that you did titled Secular Meat. That was in Goa, right? For Serendipity?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, here we go. So Rajyashri, can you talk about this? I mean, I'm really interested in how you're kind of using the floor in these larger works for something very delicate as well, and they quite vulnerable. And the same with the glasses, because of course they are, they can sort of shatter, but they are quite exposed.
Sure. I mean, these ceramics sort of represent, I work with recipes and writing related to Dalit literature, and these ceramics represent sort of various items of food, but also nature, and the idea of looking for food, finding food, enjoying food, but also maybe food that could have gone bad. All of these things related to an everyday experience of caste. And there's something, I do feel like I like making the effort to sort of go a bit lower and like experience work by like bending down almost. And I think with this work, especially, it was talking about foraging and just trying to find whatever was available. And I think with ceramics and these food items, it just, we do normally sit on the ground and eat. We do everything related to food does happen from the earth. So I think that physical idea of getting close to the work by bending down was quite important.
Mm-hmm. And are those laddus, are those made from manusmriti?
Yeah, so these sort of round yellow ones are, most of it is ceramic except the laddus. There's some in the corner are manusmriti that's pulped and made yellow. As a bit of I guess it's a bit of a joke, but just the fact that again it's paper and it seems harmless, but it could do so much and it could affect so many people. Yeah, and I think when I saw your piece, Lal Baji, so like, how would you translate that? Red meat? Is it supposed to be red meat or red? Red meat. Lal Baji is also a sort of red vegetable available. Yes, right. And but you had pulped it. You had also pulped the manusmriti in that piece. Yeah, I mean, basically, I had made a piece of paper which was light red with the manusmriti, and then placed ceramic objects on it that resemble meat. Also thinking about, well, lal bhaji was commonly eaten in Dalit communities where I'm from. And it was also like code for eating beef. So just meaning like, oh, do you want to come eat the red vegetable? Without saying, do you want to eat beef? Because that might get people into trouble, or they might feel some shame towards it. And my family is vegetarian now and won't touch beef at all, and won't touch, maybe they'll eat like chicken or fish, but not beef at all. So we've also sort of like distanced ourselves from these associations with Dalit, stereotypical sort of Dalit practices. So it was also me kind of channeling my imagination of like what does lal bhaji look like now that I can access it, and why did it mean so much that somebody had to hide it and feel shame around it. Just playing with these meanings, and then the manusmriti behind it, because sort of that's the root of everything, at least in my opinion.
Because so the work that is in Constitutions is titled "Is Hunger Gnawing at Your Belly," and it's there's several different compilations that are from different Dalit writers that are autobiographies, in which you're really speaking about a relationship to food and access to food. And am I right that it's connected to another series, Eat with Great Delight, and also what that series is, which is not on display here. This one is very this one is really the kind of text, and yeah. Can you talk about actually this one as well, this piece?
Sure. I'll just share my screen quickly. Sorry, I know we're running out of time, so I'll be very quick. But this is, what can you all see? Can you see the text?
Yes.
Okay, great. So this is just an example of sort of a recipe book that Swapna showed. And these are the sort of recipes. So this is called Saved Jawar. When your husband leaves for work, call your sons. With their help, take out all the saved jawar kept for the rainy season from the big cane container. Quietly sell it to a merchant. The money might just be adequate for paying your son's school fees. When your husband comes to know of this, he might thrash you. You will all have to starve throughout the rainy season. But do not allow your son's education to suffer. And so this recipe / poem, I adapted from a book called The Prisons We Broke, written by Babita Tai Kamble, who's quite a well-known Dalit writer. So every time I read a Dalit autobiography, I sort of, whenever the writer's talking about food, I sort of twist it and make it into these sort of recipes, and just compile them. So I have about like 20 booklets now, and it just hopefully keeps growing. And related to that, I also made a collection of my family photographs where we were either eating or just in the kitchen or just celebrating around food, to also think of these photographs of joy and feasting along with these recipes, which many of them do sort of imply and show a lot of struggle and trauma within them, but many of them are about enjoying food and feasting. And I wanted to highlight this very complex Dalit experience of being happy but also struggling, and how is that a whole experience and not just of seeing ourselves as victims, or just as like having one experience only, and that of trauma.
Yeah, I guess I can't see my chat for some reason on the screen. It's, how much time do we have left? Robin, can you just tell me?
We've been speaking for about an hour now.
Okay. Maybe just, should I wrap up or with my questions, then we can move on to chat?
Yeah,
So I think, okay, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, yeah, you can go ahead with that. If
Okay.
you have a closing question, closing
I
remark.
didn't have a, yeah, I mean, I wanted to talk about Sajan's secular music performance, but I think that, Rajyashri, what you just sort of talked about in terms of the complication of relationships to food are, is sort of speaking about that. I'm really curious as to how all of you arrived at becoming artists and how art is, or making art or having an artwork becomes a conduit to address these very complex histories. Because I also see you all as activists. So I'm just curious how this kind of developed into art and art practice. Birender, I'll start with you.
My art journey, my first inspiration was my father. He was a blacksmith in coal mines in Dhanbad. It was the main center for manufacturing of coal in India. I raised there and brought up there in Dhanbad, and I was study art to become blacksmith like my father, to help my family business. And then I changed my focus toward documenting the bricklane worker, the activities of bricklane worker. And because the workers I encountered, they are from my native place, and we started talking and collaborating and work with together. And the role of art for me, that's why my body of work is a reflection of my personal experience and childhood memory embedded with me, which trigger my thought in the question of identity in modern social context, question of representation, and politics of class and caste difference. Yeah.
Sajan?
It's a question about my artistic journey.
Mm-hmm.
I think, sorry. I think I don't know how to put it in words, but there was a moment in my life I realized I was performing since my birth. So then then I started critically looking into the body and its relationship, body in space, and how I was carrying my body in different contexts and spaces, and what was stress in the society to see this body and the frictions and so on. So that pushing that boundaries or analyzing, and then I started critically looking into the writings and or whoever using body as a medium and material in contemporary art context. I mean, I don't know how to answer that question.
Yeah, it's not an easy question to answer, but just wondering this journey and then arriving at the idea of creating a visual language to talk about these this lived experience and the complication of this lived experience.
Please.
No, and Rajyashri, is there?
No, I studied visual anthropology, and then I was working with artists in my city, and then there was a workshop, and I participated as an artist, and I realized like, oh, I want to speak about caste in this way. And then it just sort of led from there. And actually, yeah, Birender was one of my first friends in the art world as well. We sort of, yeah, that was 2015, 2016. So it sort of grew from there, that I realized that maybe it doesn't matter if the research might be seen as sort of a bit academic or something, but I felt there is a sort of freedom and openness about exploring these themes, which are so personal and yet so large, through art practice, that maybe I felt like academia wasn't able to, like, at least I wasn't able to do myself so well through academia. Yeah.
I would like to add one small point. Since we are talking about language, I think in my practice, I'm wondering, or what I'm trying is to find new languages to express myself or collective sense.
That is what it is also. And I think when you're talking about bodies and spaces, and what you were saying before, as the body as being like a multiple body, I found that really interested in thinking about also new languages, that you have, that there's a multiplicity that's being, presented. It's such a pleasure to talk to all of you and to see you again and meet you. I mean, Birender, we met in December 2019. What was a different world, different landscape time, while you were doing the Darling residency, or the residency at the Darling Foundry. Rajyashri, we haven't met, and then Sajan, we haven't met, but I did see a performance of yours, but you were in I think it was a jute sack, and it was a long durational performance. So we've been in a very small room together, but we haven't met each other. And yeah, I just wanted to, maybe I'll just actually ask also, Birender, in terms of your time, to also bring it back to this location of Montreal. How was your time here, and what sort of research did you do, and what were you kind of exploring?
Yeah, I had a wonderful experience in Darling Foundry, and I had a chance to visit Montreal and Hamilton, and of course Saferville. And Saferville are being like mining areas close to my childhood story. And I was spent my childhood in the coal mines in Dhanbad. And what is even is interesting is the mines operated in Dhanbad. Those the same those in the Safervilles, operated by the same company, Tata Steels. And the basic research on work on compile and exchange between both sides, and stories of worker here and there, and yeah. And because the idea is it's collaboration with my school friends. Now they are still working in mines in Dhanbad, and when I was in Saferville, we exchanged photographs, video from there to there, and so that's the planning to develop. But yeah, because of the pandemic, it doesn't happen.
Was there was there a scale relationship in terms of these sort of mines? Did you feel like did it feel familiar to you?
Yeah, it's familiar because of because I met lots of the Indian workers. They work in the Saferville also, and they are also from the same region, the Dhanbad, because the wages condition in Saferville are good, and that's why they prefer to choose and work in Saferville. And yeah, we had lots of conversation, and yeah, I try to develop in future maybe.
Yeah, I look forward to that. I guess we'll move to questions from the audience, which I can't see, so I don't know how to get rid of one of the pop-up windows here on my screen. Maybe Robin, if you can read them out to me, or to Sajan, Rajyashri, and Birender.
Yeah, pleasure. There's one question in the chat and right now, and anyone else is welcome to the questions in the chat, or at this point also, you can politely open your microphones and take turns to ask questions as well. But I'll start with the chat from Prasad Bidai. I don't know if there's time for questions, but I'll put this here anyway. I'm really intrigued by the reclamation of writing, including writing as drawing especially. It parallels the discussion of writing and literacy in African-American slave narratives from the 18th and 19th century. But it also offers a different perspective from the reclamation of orality in Indigenous and Adivasi discourse, where writing and other non-oral forms of expression are questioned for their dominance and mostly for the sake of empowering oral traditions, as exemplified by the late Lee Markle here on Turtle Island and G.N. Devi in South Asia. So I'm curious to know more about how Dalit and Adivasi viewers have reacted to these reclamation of writing. Is there a debate, as I've imagined here, between writing and orality? Are these different reclamations in opposition?
Writing and orality. Thank you, Prasad. Sajan, what do you think?
I'm trying to understand the question. So I'm not familiar with the G.N. Devi or the Lee Miracle. So the question is about the language and orality itself. There's a discourse.
Writing and orality. Like, is there a debate between writing and orality?
In my humble opinion, there is no room for anything at the moment.
What do you mean?
I mean, yeah, because I mean, Hindutva is in full on in the state form. It is the state. We started as Santa Claus Murdabad, but it's not just a group of people, but it is the state, and then it will, I don't know. But anyway, coming back to the question, I think. Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to delve into or trying to find out many other forms of expressions. Also, for example, I'm curious now about sonic experiences, or and what would it be?
Well, can I actually just I'm just thinking with this idea of orality, when you are in performance and you're writing the words of Pukayal Apachan, are you listening and transcribing, or is it something that you're working from memory? Like, how are you writing his poetry?
Yeah, I took a certain part of the songs. It's not really poetry he was singing. Mm-hmm. So, and it's coming from the oral tradition, of course. And I took some songs, and but also I took my artistic freedom to experiment with it in a drawing visual sense. So yeah, but also I'm jumping into the complex meanings which create, and also the archival quality of the songs,
Mhm.
And then also, I don't know how to explain, but I feel several bodies. For me, this is not just a song. It's kind of a source of histories, which is erased or neglected. So for me, it's kind of a form and material and medium. And for me, language, as I mentioned before, whether it's writing or whether it's in the form of drawing or whether it's in the songs, it's a collection of forms to express different things. For me, it's not really I don't know. For me, as an artist, I'm seeing it as a wish. I'm seeing it very visually.
Mhm. And the sonic experience that you're working on now?
Yeah, I mean, I'm still in the very starting point, and I'm interested in the other forms of archiving, other forms of histories, and so on. So sonic is one part of that.
Mhm.
I have another question here from Mira Sethi, addressed to Rajyashri. Do you / will you work with texts other than that of the Manusmriti or passages from other Sanskrit / Hindi texts? Have you experienced any negative reactions to this work anywhere?
So I do, in terms of the paper pulp, I do specifically only work with Manusmriti because it's related to Dr. Ambedkar and more activists burning this book as a sort of, because this is the sort of main Hindu law book. So with the paper pulp work, I do want to specifically just work with that. In terms of negative reactions, I mean, I've always been really scared also of sort of, and maybe the paper pulp was almost an escape from like not wanting to burn it, but thinking of another way to sort of destroy it without maybe even like aggravating anybody too much. So as a way of saying, okay, the Manusmriti is still there. I've destroyed it, but it's like it's still within it. I haven't gotten any sort of outwardly negative reactions though, not yet, which I'm also surprised by. And I keep, but that dread is definitely there of like, okay, when is it going to happen? Like, when is somebody going to see a performance of me tearing the Manusmriti on YouTube and like do something? So I've tried to be as careful as possible, but because this does happen in public, like I have done it. So yeah, I'm definitely still nervous. But I wanted to follow Sajan on the writing and orality thing, just to say, in our communities, we were, our castes were, we learned music and we were musicians, and all of these things were really beautiful and amazing, but we were trapped with orality in our caste. Like we were sort of not allowed to access schooling, but just relegated to orality. And it was quite difficult. I mean, I remember reading books which talk about this struggle of leaving behind, learning all of these caste specific instruments, even though somebody was really good at it, and going to school instead, and the pain of that, of like forgetting something that You've been taught for generations. There is a beauty about it, but there's also an oppression within it. I don't know though if they are opposed to one another. Like even now, more and more Dalit poetry is so prevalent, like since the 70s, and poetry singing and orality comes with the poetry. So I feel like they are going hand in hand. And I can't really speak for Adivasi people, but definitely amongst the Dalit community, there is a celebration of orality, but with access to writing. It has to be hand in hand. And I don't think there's like room for nostalgia, because if there's too much nostalgia, then we lose power, and we need power. Yeah, that's it.
Trapped with orality is a very strong, yeah. Well, it's a very strong feeling, right? Like on one hand, it's like exactly that. There's a sense of nostalgia, a sense of thinking of your ancestors, blah, blah, blah. But this idea that you're trapped in it is really, really powerful. Robin, is there another question?
Two more
okay,
questions.
Good, thanks.
One from Zoya R. I'd like to know more about how the speakers feel about the existence of Dalit cuisine, in quotes, both as a linguistic term and as a foodways. Is there more shame associated with it or anger? Does calling the foodways a cuisine trivialize it? Do Dalit families and individuals try to distance themselves from it due to generational trauma? Or is it seen as a lived experience of the community that you're proud of? I'd love to learn more about that tension and push and pull. There's a second part here. I often think of the Dalit foodways as a parallel to the enslaved African American foodways as well. And I know that the latter are generally quite emotionally attached to soul food because of the ingenuity and creativity of their ancestors that it represents. Is there a similar emotion within the Dalit community?
I think Rajyashri, you can.
So I think definitely that, like, I don't like calling it cuisine for sure, because it also implies a sort of something that can be commodified and like tasted for others. And I feel like, anything from rice and dal, which we all eat, can be Dalit as well, depending on who is eating it and who has access to it and not. So I do prefer using the word foodways and Dalit food culture instead. And I think in terms of distancing themselves, I think there's both. Like my family has definitely distanced itself from these memories of eating beef and things like that. We don't associate with it at all. Many families like ours who have converted to Buddhism, we try and practice vegetarianism purely for ethical reasons. But then there is also a section of our community who's very proud of, as you were saying, also for as African American people are as well, like proud of how our ancestors survived and resisted through food, that whatever we had access to, we made the best out of, and we pushed through. There is definitely a parallel, I think, and I did try and sort of study that parallel for a few months when I was in the States a few years ago. But I think the fundamental difference is the fact that our food is considered impure, that our blood, like, we're just too impure I mean, I remember reading certain books. I don't know if it's for sure, but the African American slaves would be allowed in the main houses as cooks into the kitchen. In India, no way. Like even a few years ago, a person in my city, Pune, was hired as a cook. And when they found out that the cook was not upper caste, they immediately fired the cook. And this was a scientist's family or something like that. So there's still very much this this touch and blood reference to impurity and purity when it comes to food. So if a Dalit person touches a bowl of rice, that food is now impure for an upper caste person, according to the rules at least. And I feel like that's possibly a difference.
Robin, is there another question?
Yeah, I can follow up with the other question. This one's from Michel Theriault. Can you speak to your interface with diaspora in your experience as artists working either now, Sajan and Rajyashri, or some time ago, Birender, in places outside of India? Diaspora is not homogeneous and constitutes itself according to the context and the circumstances of the place in which they come to be. How do you interface with that presence in where you have been? How does that inflect your practice or your stance?
Who wants to take the lead on that?
I can try. I'm just sharing my screen.
Oh yeah,
Again.
I was thinking about this work today. And,
but
because
before,
I remember, because Rajyashri and Sajan, you were both in this festival, right? In Manchester? Was it Manchester or Birmingham?
No, yeah, okay, yeah.
Oh, no, sorry. I was thinking about the political yoga one that you did, Sajan. Was that?
Yeah. I'm coming to that political yoga.
Okay. Sorry.
I'm just showing Nair is an upper caste. I mean, actually it's Shudra, but they think they're upper caste. So this is nairmatrimony.com just for Nair Canada brides. I'm not showing people's images, but I'm just so and this is also Nair Social Society of Canada. So it's a one particular caste, upper caste, dominant caste in Canada. This is a diaspora. This is the diaspora. So from these diasporas, we have to work. I mean, so when I arrived in Germany, in Berlin, I mean, I don't think I have the time to show all the videos and everything. A lot of funny videos are associated with it. I was looking for yoga. I mean, this International Yoga Day celebrated in Berlin, and it's quite funny. One of the Indian right-wing minister was showing this very funny postures to the white people for the International Yoga Day, and in the umbrella, I mean, with the Indian foreign officials and so on. And this ignited me the question of like, what is yoga today and what is it for? And that's why I started the political yoga. It's a artistic research project, and how Indian Hindu right wing using yoga for their soft power politics all over the world. And diaspora is participating in this larger game in the context, like a lot of diaspora creating this modern posture yoga, which is actually an American invention. But a lot of diaspora was mixing it up with their own ancestral connections. So, which is very interesting if you look into it. So this was one of the project in response to the question that while working in diasporic situations, how to create or how to respond, or how to create new works, or how is our response. This is one of my response to the diasporas.
It's very funny. I remember listening to this, I think it was in 2020, during lockdown, and just when you're kind of reciting the piece, it's really, it's a very out of body experience actually, to kind of hear your voice and then to start thinking about the kind of Brahmanical code behind yoga, and this idea of like who's actually practicing it. But also, what you're saying is that, caste travels over oceans and rivers and seems to continue its practice in the diaspora, very much so. And within each of our smaller communities, and something, I became very aware of myself without really understanding like what those differences were, or why we were even talking about it in the West, where as soon as you leave your home, it's irrelevant. But that desire to practice a kind of power in the West. Is that the last question, Robin?
That is the last question in the chat.
Okay.
Yes.
Great. Did you, by the way, Sajan, Birender, and Rajyashri, did you have any questions for each other, or just any comments? Or
I'm actually really happy to sit in a panel or a discussion with Birender and Rajyashri, and it's an honor. Thank you, Swapna, and the university to create this space. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm kind of like painfully aware of my own privilege in even having this discussion with you guys. So, I mean, firstly, thank you for even trusting me to be part of this exhibition and to work with me in such a distant way. And I'm really interested, and I've learned so much from through the materials of your work, actually, like literally the materials of your work, which is the thing that really drew me in. So if there's no more comments, or Raj, I just saw your hand go up. Did you want to say anything?
No, I just wanted to say thank you, and I'm a big fan of Birender and Sajan as well, and Prajakta and Saurabh. So it was really exciting to come together for this show, and I mean, I think three of us are quite sort of, we do get opportunities, but rarely ever together. And it was interesting to be there together and like look at our practices critically in the same space. So thank you so much for doing that.
Yeah, without making a show that's about caste or Dalit politics, like that was something I really wanted to also avoid, but to really think about the body and the implications of the body in a wider sense.
Yeah, and that's difficult to escape, whether in India or abroad. Like we do often get put into these boxes of like, okay, yes, this person will talk caste, this person will talk about labor, this person will talk about, and there's there's hardly ever any focus on the practice itself, and that was really
well, all those things are enmeshed together. That's the reality of it. And this is what I was thinking in terms of even sending you questions or thinking about questions to ask you, is that everything is like, like this, and the lived experience is also part of that, those histories of labor and caste and divisions of laborers, as Ambedkar says. Okay, well, thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. And I know it's very late in India, in Kerala and Delhi, and in Amsterdam. So with that, thank you so much. And the last day of the exhibition is the 22nd. So it's open from today until the 22nd. So if you have a chance and you're in Montreal, please come and see their works in person. And thank you again, Leonard and Bina Ellen Gallery.
Thank you, the three of you.
Thank you, everyone. This will be archived on our website. So anyone who wants to revisit the conversation is welcome to visit our site. And also you can view the previous conversation with Prajakta Potnis and Saurabh Hura, also led by Swapna. Have a wonderful day and evening, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Sajan. Rajyashri Birender.
Thank you. Thank you.
That was great, Swapna.
Yeah, then we still have two. Are they part of the staff? Where are you?
Nope,
We'll have two
they're
participants.
not on staff. It's okay.
I couldn't get rid
will,
of this participant screen. I don't know if you could see it on my screen the whole time.
Nope, I couldn't see it.
You can see it?
Nope.
You couldn't see it. Oh, so I couldn't really see Sajan's face or Rajyashri's face.
Oh no, it's because you're using the mobile app, right? Like you're on
Yeah, and then I couldn't see the chat either. So I'm.
Oh, it's fine.
Were there any interesting comments that were?
There was mainly just the questions.
Yeah.
And and people writing comments of appreciation, but
Okay.
they were all measured comments, like multi-paragraph questions. But I can send that to you, right? I mean,
Well, Prasad is one of my oldest friends.
Oh yeah.
From my childhood, and he's from the Marathi community, and he's a professor of English. So a lot of his, he also did his PhD in comparative literature, and a lot of his thinking. But I love what Rajyashri said about being trapped with orality, that there, there's no kind of, there's no romance in that.
Yeah, I mean, it got to, if there weren't as many questions, I would have asked something about Dalit aesthetics in terms of working with literature, and then being visual artists and thinking about different generations as well. And questions of access too, though, right?
Yeah.
Like text, it's very, it's easy to reproduce a text. I mean, there's challenges to it, and of course there's big print culture in India too, right?
Well, exactly, yeah.
And
we're still recording, by the way.
Are we? Oh.